I was hired for doing Y2K work. Worked with like at least 25 plus products. Pretty much all of them from scratch. I was responsible for an entire region, like I was handling UK. If I had to start Lifttop from scratch, I don't know whether I would be the person to saying I'm the founder.
Your journey sounds to be a little bit interesting because it is accidental, right? I mean, it was not pre-planned that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and all.
Because we work with a new startup every 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, right? Over 10 years, 12 years, we worked with 50 plus startups.
If you're someone who wants to learn about how great teams are built, how to build better work culture at offices, how to avoid office politics, then I think this episode is for you. In this episode, we'll dive deep into Bhaskara's mind, trying to understand his psychology of building great products, building better engineering teams, building better work culture in offices, and I'm damn sure that you will get really good value from this episode. Enjoy the episode, and if you're someone who is new to Startup Tales, then don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe button. Hi Bhaskara.
Hi.
I welcome you to Startup Tales and looking forward to have a really great insightful conversation.
Thanks for inviting me. Looking forward to.
Basically, the whole theme of this podcast is going to be about how do you build great engineering teams, how do you build a better work culture in offices, and how do you build great products which operate at scale and all.
Yeah.
So before diving deep into all these aspects, would love to know how is your entrepreneur journey being, how you got into this field of entrepreneurship and all.
I've never been a big company employee in my 26 years of career. I wasn't the brightest of the kids in engineering. Struggled to get my first job. After 6 months of struggling, I got my first job. That was a big company. I was hired for doing Y2K work. This was, most of you guys, I don't know whether you guys know or not, this was 98 when the only job you would get was for working on COBOL and stuff like that, Y2K stuff. But I got lucky. Instead of getting into COBOL and like trying to do something maintenance, I got assigned to building a product in my first job itself. And the product still exists, or at least the company exists. What I built may not exist. The company is called Y-Axis. They were a startup that was helping the kids get into US. Y-Axis, I think it was like something to do with like you can grow exponentially or in a Y direction. Probably I would say that was my baby steps of like knowing what goes into a startup or kind of a new company. How do you build something from scratch? But I didn't last long in that company. I was there only for 8 months or a year. And then joined a company called Core Objects, where I spent almost 10 years. I almost say I kind of graduated myself in the startup or ecosystem of building products in that company. Worked with like at least 25 to 25 plus products. Pretty much all of them from scratch. I was the 7th employee in that company. Did multiple US travels. Used to spend a lot of time with founders.
And what was your role, I mean, in this?
I started as an engineer, and all the way at the last, when I quit them at end of 10 years, I was the project manager or engineering manager. I was responsible for an entire region, like I was handling UK. I used to travel. I used to spend like 6 months there, work with the founders there. The journey into Lifttop, which is, I can say that I am one of the partner, founder, stuff like that. It's probably more accidental. So Lifttop is now about, I would say 10 or 11 years old, but Lifttop as a company, we're about 13 years old. And first 2 years, we were a product company. Again, we were a dev center for a US-based product company. And that company was called Uber Media. They had raised $17-18 million funding, and they wanted to have a dev center in India. And they would kind of fund us with all the expenses and everything. We would kind of build the product for them. 2 years into India operations, they came back and said like, we run out of money, we're going to sell this unit. That is when Girish, Venkat, my partners, Girish, John and Dong, they had kind of started Lifttop as a consulting firm for the startups. And they took me in as a partner to add the engineering wing to it. So I don't know whether if I had to start Lifttop from scratch, I don't know whether I would be the person to saying I'm the founder. But I can definitely say I'm one of the partners or co-founders where I'm like happy to kind of be in this journey. So that's, I would say, my long story of like association with startups, association with founders, and being an entrepreneur.
Okay, sounds cool. So, your journey sounds to be a little bit interesting because it is accidental, right? I mean, it was not pre-planned that you wanted to be an entrepreneur and all. So, but I think it has been a lot of years, right? I mean,
Yeah.
total in operations, you have been working for more than 22 plus years in engineering, working with teams, handling those teams, building products and all. So, let's get into more insights of these points. Like, let's say there is a new entrepreneur who wants to
Mhm.
start his company, right?
Mhm.
So, the most difficult part of starting in his journey is setting up a team at the
Correct.
initial, at least,
Correct.
because you have to make people believe your vision, and you
Correct.
are not going to pay them also a good extent, right? So it's very important. How do you gather those people, make them believe what vision you have in your mind, and I mean, build the product or whatever you are thinking of?
For Lifttop, as I said, right, it's a little bit of it has been the first couple of years has been a product journey, right, where we're a funded startup, and at least we didn't have that much of money crunch to say that like we could not kind of, again, it was a US based product company, so they had raised a lot of money. So, and the second factor was the initial few people that I hired were all from my ex company. I'd hired those people, so they knew what kind of work we would do. And the third aspect I would say is what attracts the talent for us is, especially now with the lift-off mode of culture or work, what we do, because we work with a new startup every 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, right? Over 10 years, 12 years, we worked with 50 plus startups. That gives us, I don't know, 5 or 6 startups every year, right? It gives an opportunity for engineers to build something new, kind of from a technical perspective, from a domain perspective, and also they get to interact with new founders.
So I think you mentioned an important point, that was most of the founders, when they want to start their own company, right? A best way would be to get those people from maybe the previous organizations and all, where they were working. So that's a place where they must have network with like-minded people and
Correct.
all. And because they have spent also good time with them, they
Correct.
know their mindset and all also, right? So I think that's a very important point, which I feel maybe it can help other people also, especially in workplaces and all, that can help them to get those people.
Yeah.
So like, what do you look? I mean, let's say if you're talking about hiring talent itself, if you want to hire, so when it comes to Liftoff, it's like 20% of the Liftoffians are working in Liftoff for more than 5 years, right? That's a really good figures. So that's a really good retention. So there must be something which is there that you must have built, right? That's why people are sticking with you for a longer period of time. So what is that secret sauce kind of stuff?
I don't know if there is like one secret for it. I think it's multiple factors. The biggest selling point that I tell to almost, I would say 90% of the engineers or 100% of them when we are hiring, we tell them within first 6 months at Liftoff, you're going to learn like what you learned in the last 1 year.
Okay.
Whether it is a guy with like 3 years experience or whether a guy is with like 6 years experience. I think it has worked. When I talk to them after 6 months or 1 year, they come back and say, yes, it has worked for them. I think the biggest factor that keeps people is, I would say that's the number one reason, that being able to learn new things. I would say the second factor is probably that we are a flat organization. We don't have like lead manager and stuff like that. That kind of gives them the flexibility to kind of explore things. And they're not like, nobody's behind their neck to kind of do something like today, tomorrow. So we empower them. And I would say third thing is, I mean, like we don't hire anybody because somebody knows that person, like he or she is like stuff. So there is no scope for mediocre people in some ways, I would say. And it's very easy to find within the organization if somebody is kind of struggling or mediocre. I think like we figure out, or we have a conversation with them, and we kind of figure out, and it has happened to us also in last 12 years. There are a lot of cases where we've had people who joined for development and they were struggling, and we said like, do you want to do product or do you want to do QA? And they kind of shift there. And there are a lot of guys who joined as QA and like they kind of felt an interest to kind of be a developer, and we kind of moved them out. So that crisscross has happened at least like for 5-6 of them. I think that flexibility, flat hierarchy, learning new things, And probably like last factor is probably we operate almost like a family network where everybody knows like every other person. I think that culture probably retains a lot of people, I would say.
Okay, there were lots of good pointers which you I think spoke, which I would love to go in more in depth. Okay,
Sure.
so the first thing which you said is that I think learning and new challenges that people face, right? That's what excite people. So you will have to keep on giving them that flexibility to learn new things, try out new things, and all. Also, very important thing which you mentioned, I feel, is at Lifttop, I think there is more flexibility to interchange teams, interchange domains, and they can easily move it, which is not, I think, that easily possible in big MNCs and all, right? So as I think those people who are watching us, right, as an entrepreneur, so they have to build a culture where it's very easy, flexible for people to interchange if they're not introspecting, I guess, with the employees and trying to understand what they like and whether the work aligns, what work you have given to them aligns with what they like or not. You mentioned one more very important point, which is flat hierarchy. I don't know how many people might know flat hierarchy. So can you explain like what exactly this flat hierarchy is and how does it help in building a better work culture?
Sure. So we are now at Lifttop about 85 people company. Flat in terms of everybody reports into me. There is no intermediate kind of manager or kind of people in between. There are leads at the product level or the project level, but they are more from the perspective of delivery. They're more from the perspective of like managing the sprints, managing the scrums, and kind of managing the customer expectations. So they are more product focused, delivery focused people. But in terms of flat structure, what we say is, in terms of what an engineer wants to achieve, what they want to do, their career progression, all of those things is something that I keep a close eye on, or I work with them. Along with probably also the product knowledge, right? Like pretty much if we are doing at any given point of time, we're doing about 7 or 8 products, I will have pretty much like what the quarterly deadlines are, kind of what the customer expectations are on most of them, except like 1 or 2, which is like completely done by another person. So I would know when I'm talking to that person every 6 months or a year in their annual review, I would know how that person has done or what has been their needs, kind of what has been their challenges. And as you said earlier, right, it's key to knowing like when somebody feels that they're stuck. I think if we get that right, like we know we can move people around within the products, give them something exciting, interesting. I think we get it right for most of the time. That's how we are able to retain a lot of people beyond 5 years. If we don't get it right, we lose people. It's not that we've not lost people. We've lost a lot of people who've been with us for 4 years, 5 years and 6 years, and then like kind of they quit after that. But it's different reasons.
Okay. So one more thing is that flat hierarchy like sounds maybe good. So a lot of, I think, early stage startup founders could implement this flat hierarchy, and I think it will help them to build a better culture, because I think one advantage what they would have basically is the problem which I have noticed in lots of startups, which are at least maybe a team of 100, 150 also, right? Or less than that, is that there are some really good engineers, or there are really some good project managers, or whatever field. There are really good people who work. But because they have a higher hierarchy about that, right? The founder, they are not visible in front of that founder. The founder does not know that that guy is really hardworking. The credit goes to maybe the person who is going one above. So that credit, the person which has to, the credit has to go, right? Maybe that does not happen in the regular hierarchy structure, right? In flat hierarchy, I think the founder, it's directly visible for the founder who is working, who is not working and all, I think. So even for an employee perspective, I think he will be very happy, right? Because if he does something good, I think the founder will directly appreciate him. There is nothing like someone is taking his credit and going. That is not there.
Agree.
So I think this thing can be adopted by a lot of early stage, at least startup founders, which they could maybe implement flat hierarchies and see. But the biggest issue in this, I think, is while they're scaling to bigger teams, right, it gets very difficult. Now, So that point, what do you feel ki how a founder should now transition from that flat hierarchy to a hierarchy, maintaining that same work culture and all?
We don't expect to grow beyond 100. So I feel like up to 100 or whatever, we think we can maintain the flat structure. If you want to grow beyond that, I think having those initial people into the company, mentoring them or coaching them to a stage where you could look at them as co-founders at some point of time, if it is early stage company. Or if you can look at them as partners, if you look at them as like people who are like leaders, the closest they can come to you, it's as good as like you're able to clone them, meaning you're able to clone yourself and you can see yourself in those people. I think then you form like a team of 80 or 100 or 60 people under each of those co-founders.
Okay.
Then you are able to kind of replicate it. So whatever you're able to do, if your scale is like 80 people, then kind of being able to kind of have the similar 80 people, that's, I would say, is one way to solve the problem.
And especially with those people who are, who are there with you at the start itself,
correct. And who can understand the DNA of the company, who can understand how to kind of grow this organization. I mean, it's and bit of obviously the process and like kind of synergy. I think those things will be able to. I think in a startup, life of a startup, right? Your challenges are going to be different at every stage.
Agreed.
At your beginning stage, it could be all about like right people and money. But if you're talking about a company that is beyond that 100, where you can't do flat structure, assuming that you're successful as a company, you're generating a lot of cash, or you've raised a lot of money, hopefully you can put in a right process at that point of time, and you've done good job at mentoring and kind of building that kind of second level of people who can be your clones, then I think you can scale.
Oh, cool. I think the very important point is building the right processes, because when you're operating at scale, it's very important to have good processes, right? And usually it is not found in startups at the start, at least. And for some people it is frustrating also, because some people are like more organized people, they want everything to be at right places and all.
Correct.
When they don't see process, right, they get little bit of maybe that anxiety feeling will start coming in them.
Correct.
So because we spoke, you spoke about this thing, right? That at Lifttop, you don't hire mediocre people. I mean, and if you have hired also, I think it's very transparent communication which goes with them, right? So let's first of all dig into what's your hiring pattern. What do you look into people when you're hiring? The right people. And I mean, it's very difficult, right? This is one of the biggest issues which everyone face. Especially founders, hiring the right talent is very difficult. Getting those right people who believe in your vision, right? That's very difficult. So how do you do that?
So obviously from a technical perspective, the person is good or not good, all the engineers kind of do all the interviews and stuff. When it comes to me, the person is capable from like delivering or coding, kind of that is taken for granted. I think what I look for in what is generally scheduled to me as a culture round is checking whether the person is good at learning new things. The person has the curiosity.
Okay.
The person has a good attitude and a little bit of technical aspects, random checks. But my round is generally like probably only very 10% technical, but 90% is like non-technical stuff. Within these non-technical stuff that I say for, as I said, I think it's giving them a random problem statements and kind of checking like how well they're able to kind of come up with. It's not a solution that I look for. What I look for is an approach. Like, do they break it down? Do they kind of look for like ways to kind of get there? I think like probably experience also teaches a lot of stuff. It's not to say that we've not made mistakes. There are a lot of times where we were under pressures of like kind of getting somebody on a team, and like we would have probably made like decisions in a hurry. But I would say 90% of the time we've done a good job at hiring people, right people. But if we do make mistake, we kind of try to fix it within first 3 months, 6 months.
So attitude, I mean, is more important than the skill set, the whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Totally.
And like what
and learnability, curiosity.
Okay, cool. So what are like some of the questions which you ask when you are taking, some of these managerial rounds?
as I said, it's like even asking them random questions, right? Like, for example, if they have to measure the number of dustbins that are in the Bangalore city, for example, or where I would expect them to break it down by, like, for example, they will first go by pin code, and then they kind of look for, they do for just one of the pin code and then just kind of extrapolate, rather than like trying to kind of, so that solution, what they try to come up with, you will know whether the guy, when they are thrown these kind of unplanned questions, the way they would go about solving it, you will know like whether they'll come up with good solutions.
So because we spoke about culture, and I think the first part is hiring. So after you found out that, there is also this, right? So sometimes your gut feelings are wrong, and you hire a right candidate. So what happens, I mean, after that? Like, because I feel that a wrong candidate coming in a good atmosphere, right, tends to slowly start spoiling that environment. So if there would be, I think in your journey also, you must have hired wrong candidates. So what's the further process? I mean, how do you communicate with those guys when you realize that I have hired a wrong candidate?
Thing is, we try to make sure at least the impact is less, in terms of trying to make sure that person is kind of under somebody or in a team where there is strong kind of culture that they believe in the company or such network, right? The worst thing to do is like pair two mediocre people. It's going to make it. If we do know this was like not the best of the hires, we had some whatever gut feel or whatever wrong decisions, and then we got this person. First thing is we do our best effort to make sure the person can succeed. Okay. So there is enough, because you can always say when you observe somebody for the first 1 week, 10 days, the way they're working, whether it is on their technical aspects or on the attitude aspects, they may be doing like that because they're carrying their baggage. They're carrying like how they worked from the past. So in the first 1 week, 10 days or 1 month, we try to make sure we tell them that's not what we do. This is what we do.
Okay.
This is what you need to do. This is how you need to work. And I think for us, the reviews or appraisals doesn't happen at the end of 1 year, even though it happens at the end of 1 year for a lot of people. But there are a lot of people whom I would have met or discussed like within 1 month, within 2 weeks, within 4 weeks, within 8 weeks. And I would have told them, dude, this is kind of how you're working, but it doesn't work like that. Can you shift your focus like this? If it doesn't change after 2 months, 3 months, we say like, hey, it's not working out. And we kind of figure out a way that we can kind of end it amicably. And the impact is less.
Correct.
And it has happened. People on front end or back end, or people who are in the product positions, it has happened to.
Okay, sounds good. So I think that transparency is maintained of communicating what is right and what is not going right and all. That's cool, I think.
Because it's better to say the bad news ahead of time than trying to keep it for 3 months, 6 months.
Correct.
And then kind of carrying it on. It's neither of us will benefit.
Correct.
And it is not easy. It's not easy.
So one of my question is that why there is no punch in, punch out or check in, check out at Lifttop?
It's not required when people believe they're here with a purpose. And the purpose is that they need to meet the customer expectations. And if they believe in that idea, vision, and like kind of mindset, no punch in, no punch out is required.
Employees who will take, disadvantage of this also, right?
You can't do that on the long run. You can do it for some weeks, some months, but you can't do that on the long run.
Okay.
They're just hurting themselves if they do it. It's their career that they're messing it up.
So, because we are talking of culture, how does remote work come into picture in building a better work culture in startups?
I don't know whether I would say it brings in better ways to build startups. Obviously, everybody turned to remote with COVID. We've embraced it. We are still in that mode, hybrid mode, where people have to be at office 2 or 3 days a week. People who are remote, we don't want them to come over and just come to office for 2-3 days. We give them a flexibility where they'll just be at office 2 months in the whole year or something like that. I think it gives the benefit of people kind of sitting back at home and like kind of working. It works very well for people who are mature, who are who believe in like what we're trying to do. But if somebody needs assistance, somebody needs to kind of work closely with other team members, then for such people it's hard.
Correct. Very true. Also, because of remote culture, there are a lot of disadvantages also. So how do you ensure good performance from your employees, provided they're doing remote work? Because it sometimes gets hard.
The end result is, are we able to kind of deliver for the customers? And because we are in the agile scrum model, where every 2 weeks there is something that we're trying to deliver, you would know within those like 2-3 weeks or 4 weeks, max 6 weeks, you know if the person is delivering or not delivering. And we will have a conversation with them at the end of that 2 weeks or 4 weeks and say like, dude, it's not working out. And we kind of say, hey, you need to be at office.
Cool. So iteration rate of improvement is much more, faster.
Yeah.
Cool. So because many people, some of my friends, they are a victim of office politics. So how do you ensure that in your organization there is less office politics or no office politics that happens?
I think as long as there is no, let's hire this person because I know them, because of their family, because of their friend. If you don't take shortcuts, if you are being consistent in hiring every person, and if there is no favoritism, then you will not have politics.
Correct.
I think it all starts with you as a leader. If you are truthful, if you are like not trying to cut the rules that you establish, then I think there'll be no politics. If the people at the top are not consistent, I think that's when it creeps in.
Cool.